Welcome back. Episode 3 of Griddyiron Gang. What we got today is a recap of the Week 1 games ahead of tonight's Monday Night Football game between the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. But before we get into all that, Saturday we had college football from sunup to sundown. Sunday we had the same thing. It was our first weekend full of football. What was your first impression of that weekend?
Overall, it was great. I mean, all offseason I've been saying how slow it's been going, but at the same time we get back onto the podcast and it's like it just blew right by. It felt like we came back 2 weeks since we recorded for the Super Bowl recap, and I think overall my takeaway from the first full weekend of football between NFL and college is I enjoyed Saturday much more than I did Sunday. um
Vice versa.
and yeah, so I don't know. It was obviously we'll get into my Vikes, but I think overall though, for what I have to say about yesterday, I think there's a lot of good teams that had shit games. There was not a lot of clean football from the good teams that are supposed to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave way for these lesser teams to come out and show a little bit of something, because the lesser teams, in my opinion, yesterday, they just came to play compared to these better teams. And I think part of it, I'm not saying that teams should be playing their superstars in preseason or whatever, but I think preseason is at least key for one preseason game to play your starters and get a full series under your belt to really kind of get things moving towards that regular season opening, and just to get some camaraderie. Because I mean, it's not the same in training camp practices going up against your guys. It's not the same, just practicing each and every day going full speed. It's the game speed is much different. And I'm not saying that you want to, put anyone out there with the possibility of getting hurt in preseason, because that's obviously dumb, and that's what a lot of teams are going away from. But I think, like Vikings, for example, they just looked out of sorts, and that's not like or at least what I was expecting. They just looked like they weren't gelling. They weren't, it was just a lot of bad football being played. So, and I think that goes for quite a few other teams this weekend as well. So it was just a tough one to watch and kind of stomach, because on the surface level, it looked like, damn, these are a lot of good games being played. But really, when you think about it after the full day of games, you're like, man, a lot of teams just did not look prepared to play and to give their best full effort. So that's my takeaway from it all, just on the opening statement there.
I agree. Overall, I feel like it was more my kind of style of football. A lot of running the ball, a lot of defense, and that's just kind of my formula for winning. But you mentioned a lot of teams not really playing any of their starters in the preseason. You get to the first couple of weeks of the regular season, a lot of teams are knocking off that rust. Two teams that we expected to have, two of the better offenses in the league. Detroit was on the road Thursday night, opened up the season at Kansas City. That game ended up being 21-20, a very slow start. Both teams, quick first possessions. Detroit looked like they had another one. Dan Campbell, though, he rolled the dice on their own 17, fake punt, gets them a first down. They end up finishing that drive with an Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown. Chiefs, without Travis Kelce, no points in the first quarter. And, I mean, I know preseason I said this might be the most balanced offensive room they have. I was obviously considering Travis Kelce would be part of that. Without him, it looked pretty pedestrian on the outside. Tight ends, below average without Travis Kelce. And I mean, Mahomes is doing his thing still. A lot of people are going to point to Kadarius Toney. He dropped one pass in the first half, ended up in a pick six. Brian Branch, rookie out of Alabama, took it to the house. He dropped another pass in the second half, late in the fourth quarter, when the Chiefs were trying to make their comeback. That would have put him probably right in field goal range, probably would have won them the game. So a lot of people are going to say, okay, Detroit's here, they've arrived, but I really think Kansas City shit the bed and they let this one slip away. But let me hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, this is honestly, when I made this prediction, my prediction at least, I picked the Lions in a close one.
You did.
I thought that they were just going to, especially without, I didn't know at the time whether Kelce was going to be out or not, but I did know Chris Jones was out. And thankfully he's only out for that game because he signed his new 1-year deal with them today. So that they're thankful that that's settled, and they can, because when you look at this game without him, I mean, the run defense was putrid. It was there was really no dominance aspect of their defense out there. It was just kind of like last year. There's a lot of holes, a lot
Hmm.
of plays given up that shouldn't be given up. But yeah, I mean, I think Kansas City had a total of 8 drop passes across the board.
Ten
That's not
percent.
that's not going to win you the game ever. And then you look at that one where it was Brian Branch pick 6. Tony, I mean, that was right in his. It was right chest level on. Hit him
Hmm.
in stride,
Hmm.
and it was just a. I mean, there was a freeze frame of that play where the ball was in his hands, being ready to be caught, and Brian Branch was 5 to 7 yards away from him. So that was. I mean, it's just bad football.
Hmm.
And I think Kadarius Toney will put this one behind him, and he'll come back stronger. Obviously, I don't
Yeah.
think that type of game is indicative of the player that he is. So I'm not too worried. I think, like I said with this prediction, I said the Chiefs will stumble out of the gates. It's going to be a slow start, but come back to me in mid-season, end of season, and we'll see where they're at, because this is not how they're going to play the full season. They'll be
True.
back. They'll be back stronger than ever. There is still some holes across that team that you worry about, but I was uh, I was pretty pleased with McDuffie's play on defense. I thought I think he led the team in tackles. But he looked like he took another huge step from last year to being the player that they expect him to be. So that's nice. But back on the Detroit side, I think they still need to fix a little bit of that run game. I think they fed the ball to Montgomery a little too much and a little too, I mean, and not enough to Gibbs. Gibbs was clearly the more fast, explosive back, and that showed. The touchdown that Montgomery got, I mean, that hole was big enough for anyone to score a touchdown. So, I mean, take it for what it's worth. But and then Jared Goff, he didn't play his best, but he made clutch throws when he needed to make them, and he looked very much in control of that offense, leading them. So I think while it was a poor start for Kansas City, they'll right the ship, get back on track. In Detroit's side of things, they put the league on notice because they believe in themselves. I think the hype is real with them. Being in the NFC North, a Vikings fan, I don't want to admit it, but I mean they looked the part. Especially what really won me over with them in this game was one of the reasons I love Dan Campbell, to go for it on your own 17 on 4th down. That alone puts the league on notice because they're not scared of anybody. They believe they can beat you on any given play. So to have that confidence with this group of players, I think they're onto something, and I think that you know getting at least one win in the playoffs looks very much in reach for them this year.
I think that's a very reasonable goal. You mentioned Jared Goff's numbers, right around 250 yards, 22 or 35, 1 touchdown. That's probably all he's going to be able, or that's probably all he needs to do. We know they have good weapons on the outside. You might want to see another touchdown or two, given whatever week it may be. But they have good running backs, like you mentioned. They probably could have given the ball to Gibbs a little bit more. They gave it to Montgomery 21 times. They did only average 3.5 per carry. So I think defensively, Kansas City, even though they are getting Chris Jones back, I think they held up pretty well, given what we both think this Detroit offense will look like this season. Obviously, Chris Jones, probably the best defender in the league last year, so that's going to help any team. But Detroit, though, for them, I think this is big for them, like you said. Mentally,
Yeah.
just in their locker room, within the organization, to get a win like this on the road, opening night against a team like that, that's huge.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it. Anyone who watched the game, you could tell. I mean, well, any week that you go to Arrowhead, it's a hostile crowd, and it was again on Thursday, even without their, two of their best playmakers on the field. Now back on Kansas City side for a second, it was very clear to me that, and probably to anyone else, they desperately need to do something to fix that running game, because that is
It was
even
non-existent.
I mean, it wasn't there, and that's not going to help their passing offense, especially with Mahomes at quarterback. Even with how bad the receivers played, namely Tony, um, you need to establish a solid ground game for them to be able to open up the playbook more and get more explosive plays downfield. Because that's obviously what we're accustomed to seeing with Mahomes and Kelsey and those guys out there in Kansas City. So they definitely need to somehow get their run game going and be able to establish that early and often to be able to go down the field at will and score.
Let's move on to Sunday, where we had a couple quarterback debuts, the first of which being Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. They were on the road in a division game, taking on the Atlanta Falcons. They come up short, and he definitely had those rookie first game blues, 20 of 38, under 150 yards. Did have a touchdown, but he did throw 2 interceptions to a defense that nobody is really going to look twice at. On the other side, Ritter, he really wasn't turning any heads, 15 to 18, 115 yards. But the story with this Atlanta team is obviously their run game. We know what they did last year, had a top 2 rushing attack in the league, and they're picking up right where they left off. Bijan had a nice debut, 10 for 56 and a touchdown. He also had 10 catches for 40 with a touchdown. But Algier, he seemed like he was getting most of the carries with 15, 75, and 2 touchdowns, a couple of those coming late. But Atlanta was able to put Carolina away. I did see J.C. Horn got hurt. I wasn't sure if he was able to come back into the game or not. If he wasn't, and he's not able to come back anytime soon. That's a huge blow because he did miss time earlier in his career with an injury as well. But Atlanta gets his division win, 24-10. What'd you think about this one here?
Yeah, obviously I picked Carolina thinking they could come out and win this game. I thought it was pretty much 2 evenly matched teams, in my opinion, going into this. When you look at Desmond Ritter's numbers, you'd think that's a losing quarterback, but they did enough to win. It wasn't a pretty game by any means, but I don't know which way to go. Is this a positive? I mean, it's got to be a positive for Atlanta, but what do you make of it for Carolina? I mean, you kind of laid an egg in a sense against this Falcons team. But I think in the end, I do believe Carolina will eventually be the better team as the season, goes on. But once again, Atlanta, you gotta utilize this tight end, Kyle Pitts, more than what you are. Like,
Yeah, at some
this,
point.
waiting till fourth quarter crunch time, and then you start utilizing him. I mean, he had that 35-yard catch within the 10-yard line.
And
He's
bro,
capable.
Drake London didn't register a catch, and Cordell Patterson didn't suit up. So
It,
where are these passes going? I don't I don't understand it, dog.
it's bad, bro. I don't, and that's the thing is like, that's why I'm just not a believer in Ritter. I don't think he's that great of a quarterback, and you're gonna waste a lot of those talented guys on that offense with him at quarterback, and even their coach, who is it? What's his name?
Atlanta's coach, I'm blanking right now.
Yeah, I'm blanking, but I still haven't seen enough from him to believe in him leading this team. I think Atlanta, you know, they're a better organization than what they're putting out there right now. The last couple of years up until this point, and until we see more, I mean, Desmond Ritter he's got to develop each and every week this year for them to have a chance. Like, he's got to be able to put up more yards, more touchdowns, and he's got to make a lot more clutch throws, even though he had a couple Sunday. But, you know, and I think with Bryce Young being probably the most pro ready out of all rookie quarterbacks, he's going to still have his slow start this year. He's still going to kind of come along slowly, but it's up to, we're going to need to see more out of Miles Sanders to be a true number 1 back, which, that's up for debate still. He was solid in Philly, but we've always questioned, is he a true number 1 back? So
Yeah, that run game didn't do him many favors. Hayden Hurst, Adam Thielen are solid weapons, but watching some of that game, they weren't able to get any separation, and that's not going to help Bryce Young at all. They really don't have a
Yeah.
go-to guy on the outside. They really don't have a go-to guy on the perimeter or in on the interior either. And then, like you said, Miles Sanders, he's a solid back, but is he a true number one for 17 weeks? That's yet
Yeah,
to be seen.
and I think Miles Sanders, he had a lost fumble yesterday too, and he's kind of had ball security issues throughout the course of his career so far too. He's kind of loosey goosey with toting the rock, but so it's just like I said, this is gonna be the theme of this episode for me. Is it's week one. It's not time to overreact to these games
Yeah.
because we know you can start 0-1 and go on to be a 11-6, 10-7 type team, which is not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. So, to have a winning record at the end of the season in any means, even if that's 9-8, better than what we expected most times. So, it's this game was just, it was what I thought it was going to be, not the outcome, but just two teams in a weak division that are trying to find their identity, I think.
Yeah, two teams that are probably pretty evenly matched. I felt like on paper Carolina was a little bit better than Atlanta, but maybe that experience at quarterback, even though Desmond Ritter isn't the greatest, and just the overall formula that they have, just running the ball, playing solid defense, making the most of their opportunities, that's going to keep them in a lot of games and probably have them beating most teams with the talent level of Carolina.
I agree.
Next, we're moving on to Houston, where they traveled to Baltimore. We had a rookie quarterback in this game, C.J. Stroud, 28 of 44, 242 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but did lose a fumble. Houston played very good defense in this game. Baltimore's offense started slow. Not sure if that's due to Lamar and his accuracy issues, the offensive scheme, or Houston's defense. Could have been a little bit of all the above, in my opinion. Although Lamar did finish 17 to 22, he only finished with 169 yards, did have an interception, and did lose a fumble. So you mentioned being loosey-goosey with the ball. Lamar did have two fumbles, did lose one of them, but two turnovers from your starting quarterback is never something that you want to see. The score ended up being 9 to 25. We did have 3 rushing touchdowns. Dobbins had one early. Unfortunately, left the game with a torn Achilles. He'll miss the rest of the season. Justice Hill came in, capped off 2 runs on the goal line, and pretty much sealed this game up for Baltimore. But my takeaway from this game is the offense wasn't impressive. I think 30 points should have been an easy goal for us to reach this game, and we weren't even close to getting that. We did get hit with some injuries, obviously, coming into the game. No Mark Andrews, no Marlon Humphrey. Ronnie Stanley did get injured in this game as well. So this is looking a little bit like deja vu, man. All of our big guys are going out, and they're going out slow because we already lost Dobbins for the year now. So,
And that's not what you want in this division.
it's not, bro. This is a tough division here. So that's my takeaway from the game. Happy we got the win. We'll talk about week 2 in a little bit here.
Yeah, I think the score being 25-9, 16-point win didn't feel like that type of win.
Mm-mm.
And I think like I would put Ravens in that category of what I was talking about of, not playing their superstars and their top people in preseason. You could tell it looked like they weren't all connected and going the same way. It was just like the gel wasn't there. It was, you got Odell for 2 catches and 37 yards or something like that. He drew 2 defensive pass interference penalties. So he's clearly still that guy that people have to key on. And that's going to bode well for that offense moving forward. But I really like this Zay Flowers player. I think he's going to be a huge boost for your offense for the long haul. I think he's going to be a key cog in that offense. And it'll be nice when Mark Andrews gets back so he can eat a little more. But yeah, you got to really think about what do you do with this run game now that J.K. Dobbins is once again out for the year. Because even though you have, hey, hey man, anyone would love JT, but Look, I mean, what do you feel comfortable with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill manning that
God
job?
no, God no.
And that's the thing. That's where we both are in agreement with. You have to be able to run the ball effectively to still win games. Like it showed in the Minnesota game, and we'll get to that. But like without a solid run game, you let the defense pretty much have their way with your offense.
True.
So it's tough when you can't have a solid run game, you know. But yeah, I mean, I thought the Ravens would win. They'd cover that 10-point spread, which they did. But being 7-6 at halftime, it was starting to make me wonder. I'm like, damn, what's going on? Is the Ravens, I just felt the Ravens were playing down to Houston's level, in all
Right.
honesty. So it was a slow go to start. They second half they started to find their footing. I think it was just one of those week one games where you're just not up to game speed yet. You're not fully acclimated for the NFL regular season yet. You got guys still trying to connect. I mean, look at all the new playmakers Lamar has. It's not going to be like he's coming out the gates blazing week one, especially when they're not getting preseason game action together and trying to get that offense rolling right away. So it's a lot of the same themes in these games week one for me. But at the end of the day, it was still a good week one win for the Ravens. I think that it's going to be a tough season just for how tough that division is. And we saw that yesterday with how, I mean, Cincinnati, Cleveland, obviously, and then Pittsburgh's game, but they didn't play a division rival either. So we'll talk about that. But, Texans, I think what they did was, what's the word I'm looking for?
What they did defensively for sure is they were able to contain Lamar. Every time he broke that first defensive end, pushing up his shoulder, stepping up into the pocket, trying to break out, they had another guy there. Will Anderson had a really good game defensively.
Yeah.
But you did mention Zay Flowers. I really love that connection. There's some of these rookies that played this weekend. We'll get to your guy later, Addison, Zay Flowers, Jameer Gibbs. Some of these guys, I mean, they look
A
like they
lot
can
of,
be real game changers coming up
lot
pretty
of,
soon here.
lot of these rookie playmakers will be in the running for offensive rookie of the year, I think, one way or the other, just based on their stats at the end of the season. But what I was saying for the Texans, it was very encouraging, especially on defense. I think you're getting the D'Amico Ryans effect right away. Those guys want to play for him. Very good. I mean, look what he did in San Francisco when he was there. I mean, he's a hell of a defensive ball coach. So I
Yeah.
think defensively is what's going to keep them in majority of the games this season, while their offense continues to slowly but surely, find their identity. It's gonna be ugly at points, but if their defense can keep playing like they did yesterday and build upon that, you should have an encouraging first season with D'Amico and CJ Stroud and all those guys. So, but what he's doing on that defensive side of the ball with the personnel and everything, you gotta like what you're seeing.
Yeah, that's for sure going to be the staple of that team, in my opinion. That defense played really well yesterday. CJ Stroud had his moments. They didn't really get that running game going at all. I know Damian Pierce had a really good rookie season. I believe Roquan had 16 tackles yesterday, so he was all over the place. I really love our front seven defensively. That's for sure the
Yep.
strength of our team. And I mean, I don't expect a lot of teams to be able to have too much success running the football. But if CJ Stroud was able to make some plays here or there, this game would have been a lot more interesting because there were plays to be made. And I think Houston is for sure headed in the right direction. Our last rookie quarterback that got a chance to start yesterday, Anthony Richardson. He was hosting Trevor Lawrence, division rivals in Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville, they're a good team, but they have trouble closing out some of these football games. They have trouble taking care of the ball. Credit to Indy for sticking around. At one point, this was 14-14 after Anthony Richardson threw a touchdown pass to Michael Pittman Jr. And at that point in the game, the stats between AR and Trevor Lawrence were pretty similar, if not in favor of Richardson. So I think by far out of these three rookie quarterbacks, he had the best debut. His numbers were 24, 37, 223, a touchdown and a pick. Also did run for a touchdown as well on 10 for 40. I think Jacksonville, man, they just scare me. They have all the talent in the world, but they just don't take care of the ball. They don't put teams away, and I think that's kind of what kicked them in the butt last year, similar to the
Yep.
Chargers, and it's looking like that might kick him in the butt again this year. But they
Yeah.
did get this win 31-21 as expected. So that is
Yeah.
how you want to
So
start the season.
I think what this comes down to for me is just Jacksonville starting slow. When you look at the final box score and everything, they had a solid game. I mean, Lawrence, very good game. Calvin Ridley, a huge boost for Trevor Lawrence's confidence going into the season and down the road. He's going to obviously be that main number one guy for him. But then you look, Zay Jones is a terrific number two. Travis Etienne, still a solid running back. I mean, they got weapons all over the field. So they're going to give teams a lot of fits throughout the course of the season. The one thing I took away, though, for the Colts side of things is I didn't expect this type of game from AR. He did fairly well. I mean, he had an interception or whatever, but he had, what was it I had here? 24 of 37, 223 yards, one touchdown and an interception. But he also ran 10 times for 40 yards and a touchdown. So that's what you expect to get from a guy like him. If you can get those numbers consistently in his rookie season, the future's looking bright. And then Michael Pittman had a great, what was it, 11 targets, 97 yards and a touchdown. I mean, you want those positivities week one for a team like this, especially without JT. And I think if they have JT in there, this might be a different outcome. Who knows?
I think the score is different, but Jacksonville still squeaks out with this one. But JT is for sure a game changer, so I'm not even too confident in saying that. I agree with you, though. Anthony Richardson, I did not expect a debut like this, especially after what we saw at Florida, what we saw in the preseason. But credit to him, man. Credit to the staff, because they do not have the playmakers out there that you would think that this kind of debut would be
Yeah.
achievable. So the fact that they were in this game with the team that most people picked to win this division, I mean, credit to Indianapolis.
And I will say with AR, though, the one thing that stood out to me was because of his mobility and being able to run, he's got to be smarter in those decisions because he took a couple big hits that you cannot afford to take with a guy his size.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to work out.
Yeah. They're aiming to tee off on him. They have to, which is unfortunate when you're that big. This next game, you and I, we're going to have to work on something to call this. Right now, I have it as the Dirty Draws game because I'm just trying to put it in the middle of the hamper so we can forget about it. It's Arizona at Washington. The score was 16-20, and surprisingly, Sam Howell had a pretty good game. 19-30, 202 yards, touchdown, and a pick. But that's all I have for you on this one, bro. I didn't tune into this one at all. I know Josh Dobbs was the quarterback on the other side for Arizona, but I think we said what we had to say about both these teams in the preseason. Two of the teams that I'm probably the most down on after week one. Two of the teams I was probably most down on before week one. So I had no eyes on this game at all. Arizona does lose 16-20 though.
Yeah, it was an ugly game all around. On paper, coming into this game, you're thinking, okay, Washington's favored by 7. That should be an easy cover with how bad Arizona is. But then you get to the game, you start seeing replays and this and that, and it's clear Sam Howell, dude, is not that guy. He's just, I don't know why not. I think this is a
This is sabotage right here. I don't know
this
what this is.
this game is probably at least a 7-point or more win for Washington if Jacoby Brissett is in there playing. That to me is a fair statement because Sam Howell, I don't think, how can you, I mean, I'm not there in training camp, I'm not there in practice or whatever, but it just seems like a boneheaded coaching call to make Sam Howell your starting quarterback when none of us in the world really knows what to expect from him. We've seen Jacoby Brissett many times come in and win games and put up great numbers. I mean, so to just hand the reins over to Sam Howell over a guy like Jacoby Brissett doesn't make sense to me. And I think it clearly showed yesterday. But there's not much else to say for me because, I mean, what can you really say about the Arizona Cardinals? I mean, I'm not going to go this whole season talking about each and every game they're in because it's putrid. we know they're going to be a top 3 pick.
We might have to do something different. Like once we put you in Gravediggers, we might not talk about you for the rest of the season. Next game we have a couple upsets at the noon slot. Tampa Bay on the road at Minnesota. You can take it from here.
Man, what is there to say here? Not what I expected, not what I wanted for a first week Viking season. But I'll start off by saying this. You win, what was it, like 11 one-score games last year?
Yep.
You knew that it wasn't going to happen this year because that's a fluke. That's the fluke of all flukes right there, especially in the NFL. So what I took away from this was early on in the game, I felt like Brian Flores was calling a great game on defense and having our guys in the right spots, pressuring, the right amount, sending right blitzes. He's got different disguises out there. And we were giving Baker Mayfield in that offense quite a bit of headaches. Flip the field with our offense, and it's like it was just a mixed bag of things. We look great at parts, and then we look like, what are we doing? Like this just makes no sense with how explosive our offense can be. Loved the first game out of Addison. He had that long touchdown grab. He's I think he's gonna be able to open up some things for JJ more and more. First half, JJ lights it up, has 138 yards or something like that, and he's got, what was it? I don't remember how many catches.
7 catches.
Yeah. But then it's like repeating last year all over. We get to the second half and KOC tries to almost be too smart, and he goes away from him, and we crumble because we're not implementing him into the game plan anymore. That's just dumb coaching. And KOC in the second half had a lot of questionable play calls. He loves these running back screens, tight end screen plays that get us nothing. Those plays to me are only meant for here or there when you need to catch that defense off guard. And those aren't staple plays. Those aren't plays you can build off of consistently.
No, he be running them joints like 22 duo.
So like, especially on a couple of those second half drives when we're, quickly going 3 and out, and within the first 2 plays, it's a screen like that for negative yards. Why are we doing this? We have an offense that can easily put 40 yards on you in a blink of an eye. Credit to Tampa Bay's defensive coordinator, because I think they made quite a bit of crucial adjustments to come back out and combat us. So credit to them. And I felt like we just went into halftime and we're just like, stick with the game plan. Like, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. No adjustments, nothing. And then you look at the game in the first half again, and it's just brutal interior O-line play. You got Ed Ingram knocking the ball out of Kirk's hands for a fumble that's lost, and then he gets sacked again. He loses that fumble, and then we're in the red zone, and Kirk sees KJ, but he hesitates, and he throws behind him, and it's intercepted in the red zone. It's just key mistakes that you cannot have if you're going to be a successful winning football team. And to me, it's like, I'm not trying to overreact, but if this is what we're getting, especially with, our schedule being pretty tough, and then we go to Philly on Thursday night, short week, this is one where even if we don't win Thursday night and we go 0-2, you have to go toe-to-toe with Philadelphia the course of the game and make it a bloodbath and just duke it out. It's got to be 2 heavyweights standing toe-to-toe.
Kirk, baby.
Yeah, look, That's what it's got to be if you give us any hope for the season going forward. Because if we're starting 0-2, it's not looking good. Many 0-2 teams don't make the playoffs. We already know that. So it's not a good. You needed to get this one to get off to a good start, and it's just not looking good right now. And that brings me to my point of a whole organizational aspect. I like the hire of KOC. I believe in KOC, but right now, I'm not feeling too warm and fuzzy about Kwesi being a GM in this league. I think his first two drafts are might be two of the worst drafts a GM could ever have. Because you got Lewis Seen, your first pick. He's been injured like crazy. Obviously, hasn't had time to get reps in on defense, and he's barely playing. You got Andrew Booth Jr., your second pick, who's not even NFL
Coop Jr.
caliber. He's terrible. Then you got your first O-line pick in Ed Ingram, who's just fucking stepping on Kirk's foot every other play, knocking the ball out of his hands. Like, that's not even practice squad level type shit.
No.
And then the only home run pick you have is Jordan Addison. And I can argue, was that even a fucking need for us? No. We neglect the O-line all the time in Minnesota, and it shows. It's bad, and it's just whatever he's doing. And like I said today, I was like talking to someone, and I'm like, bro, the fact that we didn't get a deal done with JJ before the first game scares me. That scares me because
terrifying.
His price is only going to keep going up, especially if he has another great year. And I truly believe that. I know it's not what he said. He said he hopes Kirk's his quarterback next year and this and that, but I don't think he wants to play with Kirk. I don't. And I just feel that we might come down the road at some point where JJ is another guy who forces his way out of Minnesota because he doesn't like the direction of this organization. And how can you blame him? I mean, the first 2 years of Kwesi leading the charge is not looking good. This competitive rebuild, whatever it is, you're better off firing Spielman and Zimmer, coming into last year and tearing it down and trying to build up something better. But you kept over half the players that they had, trying to make this a competitive rebuild, whatever the hell that means. I don't know how that works, but so in my eyes, that just means we'll stay the mediocre route and be content with that, which, I mean, like I said yesterday after the game, I can't keep going and get my emotions invested in this shit, bro. It's fucking draining. It's irritating. It's maddening. It's frustrating. It's just, you played the fucking Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home, bro. You had sick uniforms and you just shit the bed.
Oh, the throwbacks were clean.
It was, oh man, it was so bad. It was like a kick in the nuts and a punch to the gut all at once. It was just like, what is this shit? I mean, for all the hype that at least our offense is getting all off season and people knowing what we can do, we didn't even look half of what we could be. It was just that much of a letdown.
Yeah, there were some losses of larger margin, but I think this was for sure the most disappointing loss of the weekend of any team. This was the easiest call for me before week one. The Vikings are going to win this game. I'd have put the most money on this game out of all these games. So this was Baker, 21-34, 173, 2 touchdowns. Mike Evans still on his road to 1,000, 6 for 66 and a touchdown. Kirk Cousins.
Look,
go ahead.
I will say I'm not gonna, try to love up on Baker like that, but he showed some good things yesterday, and it showed why they wanted him to be their quarterback, because especially at the end of the game, this man Baker doesn't give a shit. Like, he's gonna gunsling it, and he's going to take off and run and lower the shoulder and get the hard yards that needs to get. And that's what he did at the end of the game. I mean, he didn't play bad. He didn't play great, but he did what he needed to do to win that game for them. And that's what impressed me the most about him.
Yeah.
So I got to give him some credit. I can't always hate on Baker because he does have glimpses of being a great quarterback. Not elite by any means, but a good NFL quarterback. And it's just he's got the playmakers around him. So I think this Bucks team can actually go out and win some games and be a mediocre team this year, and a sneaky team that will sneak up on teams that are much better and battle them. I mean, I think they have that in their nature at least this year. So, and when you still have Godwin and Mike Evans, you still feel comfortable going out there and slinging the rock. So, I don't know what I couldn't give you a prediction or what to expect season long wise with this Buccaneers team, but they're not as bad as what I was assuming they'd be.
I think they're still pretty bad. They got the 2 linebackers, the 2 receivers that you mentioned, Winfield Jr. Outside of that, I mean, this team has nothing to offer me personally. But they were coached well. I mean, they capitalized off some turnovers that the Vikings shot themselves in the foot with.
And
And sometimes that's all it takes, man. You
it's the
give these weak
NFL.
teams a chance to stick in the game. They're professionals.
The
You know,
NFL.
you give
Yep.
every minute that passes is more confidence on that opposing team. So
And while I say that though about them might not being as bad as what I assume they'd be, it goes back to what you said about Vikings shooting themselves in the foot. This game, you take away those turnovers and you're able to put up at least a touchdown and 2 field goals or 2 touchdowns and a field goal. I think that we easily win this game.
one of
It's
those was in the red zone.
like, yeah, I mean,
That's at least 3.
interception was at the goal line. So
Yep.
it's just we should have
That too.
we
Yeah.
should have won the game. We shit the bed, and that's just what it is, man. If this is gonna be a season where I come on here and I'm saying this shit week in and week out, God, it's gonna be a long season. But
I mean, look at that. We talk about the turnovers. The guard forces one. Another fumble by Kirk and then an interception on the goal line. I mean, Vikings are one of the few teams I expect to put up 30 points a game this season. I don't expect you to shoot yourselves in the foot like that. And the way the defense looked, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic that the Vikings are still going to win this division. The defense showed a lot of good signs. I know it was Tampa Bay, so I mean it's a good tune-up game when you have Brian Flores putting in a new system. You would like to win the game, obviously, but I thought they did some good things overall.
right, and that's the beauty of I think you get a lot, especially in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota fans are very overreactive. They're very emotional, and they want to chop everyone's heads off after the loss. But you just can't do that. I've learned the hard way. You got to take it week by week, especially at the start of the season. It's only week 1. I expect us to do very good things still. It just makes me a little bit more nervous is all I can say, really. It does. Who wouldn't be nervous after a game like that? And then you got Philly on a short week in Philadelphia. So while it might not look good, like I said, if we can go into Philadelphia and put up a very hard fought game, and even if we lose, make it don't go in there and lay an egg like you did last year, week 2. You gotta be able to show that you can compete with the best teams in the league if you want to be, talked about in that regard. That you can go in there and battle with the best of them. Because, like I said, if we lose, we lose. But just make it a close game. A 3 to 6 point loss is I'll deal with that against this team because Philadelphia is still a Super Bowl contender this year.
No question. We'll talk about them in a little bit. We do have another blowout and another upset. Not another blowout, excuse me. We have Cincinnati at Cleveland, 3-24. And for me, I'm giving a sarcastic thanks to Cleveland because you're talking about you have a tough game week 2. Well, Joe Burrow just threw for 82 yards against the Cleveland Browns, and he is playing the Baltimore Ravens next week. So I'm sure him and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and the boys are going to be out for revenge. T. Higgins, just like Drake London, who we mentioned earlier, didn't register a catch. How do I know? Both T. Higgins and Drake London were on the opposing fantasy team I was playing this week. It's great. Cleveland, 16-29. at the quarterback position, 150 something yards. I mean, Deshaun Watson did okay. He did run one in as well. A lot better than what he looked last year, especially against a team of this caliber. Cincinnati, probably one of the better overall teams, but I just have no idea what happened to this offense on Sunday. I know it was a little bit rainy. I mean, Joe Mixon couldn't even get going on the ground. I just really don't know. I mean, is Cleveland's defense that good? I mean, I know they do have my favorite formula, a great defensive team with a good running back, probably the best running back in the game. But there's no way that I could have imagined a game like this where Joe Burrow has under 100 yards, Cincinnati has 3 points, and it was just a complete demolition of the Bengals.
Yeah, I'll say this game mainly had to do with how good Cleveland's defense was. I think Garrett and Za'Darius combined for 8 hits on Burrow.
They were going crazy on
Those
Joe,
two
man.
together. I mean, I think this is the best spot Za'Darius could be in his career right now, because he's finally. Yes, he was with Danielle Hunter before, but Danielle Hunter, I mean, you got to start talking about being overrated at some point with that guy. Truly.
Yeah, he's
Um,
a Jadeveon Clowney clone.
so with him being lined up with Myles Garrett now, he's finally across the side of the field with one of, if not the best pass rushers in the league. And so teams cannot go out of the way to double, triple team Garrett all the time, because you just leave Za'Darius wide open, and that's going to be fearsome for teams down the stretch this season if they can at least stay healthy. Because obviously Za'Darius has some injury history problems, but I think the tail of the tape on this game was how good Cleveland's defense played and got after it. I'm not going to panic about Cincinnati. I think along with KC, it's kind of one of those slow starts out the gate, and you just got to clean some things up, and you'll be right back to where you're supposed to be.
For sure.
I don't think you look too heavy in. Yeah, I don't think you look so far into this game to come up with, oh, Cincinnati's dead or this and that. Like, it's just teams have bad games. It is what it is.
They do, and they started 0-2 last season as well. Joe Burrow missed a lot of time with that calf injury. So Cincinnati's one of those teams I kind of expected to start slow, but I would not have expected something like this. Something I did expect was this Tennessee at New Orleans game being the kind of game that it was, a physical dogfight going down to the last few possessions. New Orleans, Derek Carr in his debut, they were able to sneak out a W 15-16. Over 300 yards, a touchdown and a pick. On the other side, Tannehill, 3 interceptions. You could argue he was the cause of the loss for the Tennessee Titans, who had plenty of opportunities to win this game on the road in a tough environment. Very tough teams to play. I think both teams are going to be in about 9, 10, 11 games just like this all season, just because of the style that they play and the lack of talent that they have. They're going to have to grit and grind out a lot of these W's that they're going to have to win. My takeaway from this game is pretty much that, man. This is what we're going to see from both of these teams. Derek Carr, I like him in the 250, 290-yard range. I think that's going to be a very balanced attack once they get Alvin Kamara back. Jamal Williams didn't really have a great game. Did fumble the ball a little bit, but I think that's going to be one of the better 1-2 punches once they start getting that chemistry down. New Orleans is a team to look out for in that division. Yes, Tampa got to win. Atlanta got to win. So there's 3 1-0 teams, but I think New Orleans is going to be able to make some noise in that division. And then Tennessee on the other side, I mean, I think they're going to be okay. We don't expect a lot from Tennessee, 9-8 or something around there, but these are the games that they're comfortable in playing. And once they get
Yep.
Derrick Henry with his legs under him a little bit, they get some more continuity between Tannehill and D-Hop or whoever the quarterback may be throughout the season. They have 3 who all have a chance to play. I think Tennessee is going to be okay. I think they just have to figure out that quarterback situation. They can't have that many turnovers and expect to win on the road.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this was another ugly game. Not much to say about it. I mean, what worries me, though, is when you look at Hopkins out there. I mean, he's yelling at officials. He's yelling at Ryan Tannehill. He's
not happy.
He's already not happy and liking the outcome of what's going on. So Tannehill's got to find a way to consistently target and get the ball to his number one option in D-Hop, because that's going to, especially when you got Derrick Henry back there, you have to be able to get the ball to D-Hop to make something happen. He's one of the best in the game, and you just can't let him down because he expects a lot out of each team he's on. He expects you to go out and win. So Tannehill, for me, Tannehill's just gotta sharpen it up and really be a true leader and let him know, like, I'm going out of my way to get you the ball. So he just can't play the way he's been playing the past couple of years without having star receivers that he's used to having and this and that. So I don't know. I mean, it worries me a little bit about, Hopkins frustrated game one and showing it.
Yeah, no shit.
So I don't know how comfortable I feel about Tennessee going forward, if this is going to be a recurring theme or not. But I think the Saints, they'll get Alvin Kamara back. I think that they should be the favorite to win this division and make the playoffs. That would be my expectation. But I think, once the season starts to get rolling and get 2-3 weeks in, that's when we're going to start to see what these teams are about and what we're going to expect from them.
I agree. To cap off these noon games, if it wasn't the Tampa-Minnesota game, this was probably the biggest surprise of this noon slot. We had San Francisco on the road at Pittsburgh, and I picked Pittsburgh in this game. I said if there's any place I don't want to play week one, long offseason, the game plan for me is Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin, my favorite coach in the league. Defense, we know what they represent out there. But San Francisco said, we do not care. And like you said, we do not want to overreact, but all I have on my notes for this one is wow, bro. I mean, they started early. They went up 16-0. They never looked back. They were dominant on defense. Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, they look like some of the best playmakers in the league. Brock Purdy, I think he ended up with like 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's all you ask of that dude right there. You don't got to do anything special. You don't got to go over and beyond. San Francisco, man, shit. They look good. That's all I'm going to say right there. They look good, bro.
I've been pounding the table for San Francisco, bro. Like, I truly believe in the Niners. I think they're just well coached all around. I think they got playmakers all over the field, both sides of the ball. And Brock Purdy to come back from that injury only 9 months later and be just so accurate with the football, not making dumb decisions. Like, to me right now, he's the real deal, bro, especially for that Kyle Shanahan-led offense. Mm-hmm. I think they hit a home run getting him as the last pick in the draft.
That's amazing.
And now he is doing what he's doing, and everyone in that on that squad believes in him. So
it shows too.
You keep this team healthy for the most part, boy. The NFC's got, man, at least the top two so-called elite teams in the NFC, San Francisco and the Eagles, on paper, those are two juggernauts looking to go up against each other for a rematch in the NFC Championship.
We can get right into those Eagles right here in the afternoon slot. The most two dominant teams in the NFC, like you said, San Fran and Philly. They were on the road in New England. They got this win 25-20, and just like San Fran, they went up quick 16-0. But credit to New England. They had a shot to win at the end. They came all the way back, and they made this a real tough game and a nail-biter for Philly. I think this Philly team, the way they pounce on you, it's hard for you to come back on them. I mean, they get to be able to they pin their ears back on defense. They have great guys on the defensive back who can pick off the ball and make great plays on your receivers. And then they have the run game on offense where they can just keep the ball away from you. So the fact that New England was able to stick around and get back in this game with a chance to win it, I mean, credit to them. Mac Jones, maybe not the formula to win, 54 pass attempts, but he did have 316 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception. They do have an offensive coordinator now. Zeke had a big fumble. That was very costly to this New England Patriots team. But they do have weapons. The defense is always going to be solid. You know, they're never going to give up. They're coached very well. they're going to be a team who's going to be in contention for that 6th, 7th playoff spot in the AFC till week 16, 17. So, I mean, hats off to New England. I thought they were done, washed, put away, thrown away. It was 16-0. I said this game is over. And I look up again, they have a chance to win. So Philly does squeak this one out. They show that they are one of the best teams in the league, giving up that lead, but being resilient and not giving up the W. So credits to Philadelphia as well, 25-20. What'd you think about this one?
Yeah, I think first credit to New England for being able to come back and having a shot at winning that game. I just think it's another week one type start for a team like Philadelphia. You get off to a hot start, so you're looking like this is going to be a great week one start, but then you kind of let them back into the game with a shot to win, but you don't give up the W, which is the main thing. But as good as Philadelphia is and can be, they can be they can let teams back in the game when they shouldn't. And that's the only scary part with them is they feel like they almost have too much confidence at certain points, and that turns around and bites them in the ass a little bit. But they have the playmakers and the personnel out there where, especially the leaders in the organization too, whether it's players or coaches, to say, hey, we got to buckle it up right now. And they do it. They're able to snap out of it and go back to playing Philadelphia football. So I'm not too worried about them. Obviously, they might be a little. That's why this Thursday night game is going to be interesting, because both teams kind of didn't, and the Vikings and Philly, they didn't have the games they wanted to have. But Philly got their win, so that's what matters for them.
Right.
But they still have something to prove Thursday night, going out, shutting down Jefferson, shutting us down in every facet of the game. And we have the tall task of going out there and being able to score on them when we want. And our defense, are they able to, slow that prolific offense down at any point in the game? I don't know. So it's credit to Philly for getting the dub against New England. But for me, it was just another week one game where teams are just feeling each other out. Teams are trying to find their own footing in this new season. That's the thing about NFL compared to other sports is a lot of teams can get off to slow starts because you have such a long off season. Practices and training camps are one thing, but it's not truly you're not getting ready for that live game action speed on a Sunday. To me, that takes the first couple weeks of the season to really get your team in a groove of your day to day, like, I'm blanking on words now, but
Routine
and just, yeah, things like that. I feel once you hit week 2, week 3, especially like week 3, I'd say that's when you really start to get comfortable with your team as a whole, because every year is a different roster in one way or another. And so you just gotta do your best you can the first 2 weeks to try to get those wins. But you start, even losses, you start building off of it and start realizing the things you're not doing well and the things you need to do more of that you're doing well.
Moving on to what was probably the game of the week, we had the Miami Dolphins on the road facing the Los Angeles Chargers. When Tua is healthy, he is a motherfucking problem. He threw a dime to Tyreek on the sideline of the end zone to go up and take a lead on the Los Angeles Chargers. Unfortunately, their kicker misses the extra point, giving the Chargers a chance to go down, kick a field goal to win the game. But the Chargers they're just the Chargers, and they can't be trusted. You need 40, 50 yards to go win the game. Sack after sack after sack, and your possession ends on the sack. The game ends on the sack. And it's just the same old song for the Chargers, man. They do not close these teams out. They do not show up in the big games when it matters. They have great players all around. Herbert had a decent game. The team was 40 rushes for 234 yards and 3 touchdowns. So offensively, they did everything they needed to win the game. But defensively, they gave up 466 to Tua, 200-something to Tyreek. And, I mean, it was just nasty, man. I mean, Tyreek owns the Chargers. He's going to go get a touchdown against the Chargers, and he's proven that over the past, I don't know how many seasons, but
Yeah.
that's what he's going to do. This game was just different, though. I mean, I've heard some people say, are we going to give Tyreek the belt as best receiver over JJ now? I said, I don't know about all that, man. I mean, let's relax. JJ didn't go 14 yards on Sunday. He did go for 150, so let's cool it on that. But great game overall for Miami. Chargers, you're probably going to finish as my most disappointing team in the NFL again this year if you keep playing like this.
Yeah, it's not what you expected from the Chargers out the gate. It was one of the higher scoring games of the week. But to me, that just it showed why I feel the AFC is the upper echelon of the NFL. They just have talent all around on so many teams in the AFC. It's going to be that conference is just going to be, a sledgehammer each and every week. Just who's gonna get it, and yeah, Miami surprised me. I've been one to say I'm not a big Tua believer, but after a game like yesterday, you got to start to realize like the dude can go out and play when he's healthy. So you got to give him his credit. Having a guy like Tyreek Hill and Waddle, I mean, look, and you got your coach who came over from Shanahan in San Francisco. So he runs his offense really well and obviously wants to do some Shanahan things in his version. So this Miami team's going to be, if they stay healthy, they'll be fun to watch this season, I think, and they'll give teams a lot of fits.
I agree. I also agree that the AFC is the better conference, but Detroit did beat Kansas City, San Francisco beat Pittsburgh, and New Orleans beat Tennessee. And I think those are the only interconference games so far this week. So NFC is 3-0 against the AFC. Next game, we have some division games. First, we'll go to the AFC West, where we have the Las Vegas Raiders on the road at Denver. 17-16 win. Jimmy Garoppolo looking like him and that coach, and the familiarity between them was really beneficial in this game. Very efficient, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did have that, Jimmy Garoppolo signature turnover. This one happened to be an interception. But Denver, we thought they'd do a little better with Sean Payton running the offense and running the helm over there. They start the game with the onside kick, and that's pretty much all I needed to know from Denver. It doesn't look like they're going to be much better this season. Russell Wilson, under 200 pass yards, although he was efficient, not effective. 2 touchdowns, but, I mean, we need more production out of that position, especially after what we saw last year, especially with the expectations you have this year. I know some of your weapons are down on the perimeter. I know Javonte Williams is coming back from that pretty significant injury he had last year, so I'll give you a little bit of slack week 1. It wasn't the complete disaster that it was last year week 1, maybe just because it wasn't on prime time. I didn't have my eyes too close on this game, but Las Vegas does get the win. They do get the division win, 17-16. What'd you think about this one?
Another ugly game. I mean, it was nothing special. For me, it was just more so I'm starting to believe we're getting to the point of having to believe Russell Wilson is on his downfall and some way out on his way out of the league, just the way he's performing. He's not what he was in Seattle. And I just don't think Sean Payton's going to have enough patience for it all. So I think this might end up being his last year in Denver, most likely.
Who's Peyton's or Russ's?
No, Russell Wilson.
Okay. I mean, I can see that. He'll probably end up on a team who thinks they're just a piece away, like a Tennessee or something like that. That's where I could see Russell Wilson's future heading. Next game we have probably the surprise of the 3:30 slot. We have the Los Angeles Rams on the road at Seattle. I did say Geno had to prove it to me. So far, not so good. Matthew Stafford, on the other hand, 24-38, 334 yards, no touchdowns, no turnovers, which is huge. But the offense, which really wasn't effective running the ball, 2.3 yards per carry, did have 3 touchdowns and was able to seal this game for the Los Angeles Rams. Tutu Atwell at 6 for 119. They had another guy who I can honestly say I've never heard of have 11 catches for 119 as well. The Rams, surprise of the week. Seattle, disappointment of the week. I know we just talked about the Chargers, but This is so unexpected. So unexpected. This might even be worse than the Tampa Bay, Minnesota right here. To lose by, what is it, 17 points at home to a team like the Rams who don't have Cooper Cup. It's just sickening right here, man. You got to feel really bad if you're a Seattle player, fan, owner,
Yeah.
anything right now. It's just sad.
Yes, it was not a start you wanted to the season, especially when you're thinking about this being one of those easier victories for a team like Seattle and all the playmakers they have. Um, the Rams, I mean, credit to them for coming out and pushing them around and getting a victory. But what else can I really say about it? It's disheartening to see Seattle when they have all these expectations this year. Um, and that's why we've been saying Gino's got to go out there and replicate or even be better than last year.
Mm-hmm.
So this one was a tough pill to swallow as an NFL fan to really watch and dissect. I don't know. This is the type of game where how does Seattle respond? How do they bounce back and really turn this around? Because this week one loss is to me even worse than what Minnesota had against Tampa Bay. So it's tough, and you just got to find a way to quickly rebound, regroup, and get back to it. You got many playmakers on both sides of the ball in Seattle, and it was just a disappointing, disheartening opening to the season for them.
It's just a dud. Just a dud. I agree. Most disappointing game of the week. Next, we have Green Bay at Chicago. No Aaron Rodgers, but so far so good. There is no love lost. Jordan Love had himself a nice little game. Green Bay does have some nice pieces still, mainly on the defense. We've brought that up a time or two. Chicago, I mean, we have some work to do. A lot of garbage time numbers for Justin Fields. They also have some decent pieces. They now have a number one receiver in DJ Moore, who is fairly ineffective. I feel like the scoreboard wasn't a true showing of how dominant Green Bay was in this game, which is quite a surprise. I mean, Green Bay really put it on Chicago in this one, 38-20, and they left no question on the table.
Yeah. Um, I think we're just seeing a lot of last year's deficiencies in the Bears team, and it's just carried over to this year.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. So I think right now, if you had to say, it would have to be the Bears being the weakest link in the NFC North.
Easily.
And you just gotta, on the Packers side, you just gotta continuously see more and more from Jordan Love. You can't just take this week one win over a lowly Bears team and say we found our savior. Like he's still got a lot to prove, but it was a great start to his career as a starting quarterback. Great week one victory for him. He looks like he's capable of doing it, but you just got to see more to really believe that he's the guy for them. But I think Green Bay's defense, though, they're going to keep them in a lot of games because they still got a squad on defense. Play great defense, and yeah, I don't know. It's just I got to see more out of that offense because I don't. They didn't pass for a whole lot of yards. I mean, they
Mm-mm.
they didn't light it up or anything. It was just they just played an all around good game, and that defense stepped up.
From one blowout to another, we finish off Sunday night's recaps with the Dallas Cowboys traveling to New York to take on the New York Football Giants, wiping their ass 40-0 with those G-men and turned them into G-strings, honestly. I mean, I don't have much to say about this. This defense was as dominant as defense gets. 40-0. I don't know how many takeaways they had, how many sacks they had, but they were having negative yardage drives forced against the Giants, pick sixes. I mean, Giants didn't do themselves any favors. They were missing field goals. I mean, everything that could have went wrong for New York went wrong, and everything that could have went right for Dallas goes right. And I mean, we're not Cowboys fans, so when you go out into the world and you got to hear these guys talk, this is the worst opening week
Yeah,
for you and I in that aspect. But Cowboys really put their foot in their ass, and I mean, congrats to them. That's how you want to start your season, right there, no question.
that's how you want to start a season for sure. For me, I mean, look, Dak's out to prove himself this year at not being a choke artist. You still got one of, if not the most dominating defense in the NFL for Dallas. So they're gonna be a contender. They're gonna be, in the running to make noise in the playoffs. But when it gets to the playoffs, what can you actually do? Giant side of things, look, I didn't expect this bad of a performance from them, but it still goes to show you, like, Daniel Jones is not that guy, bro. He's
No. So does he deserve the money? That was going to be one of my questions
no,
to
he
you.
doesn't. No, they shouldn't have paid him. But I think what they did last year was kind of like Vikings-esque, where they surprised people and they're like, okay, we can work with this. And they gave him the contract and they brought in Darren Waller and pretty much kept all the same receivers. And, you got some pieces on defense, but it looks like another mediocre Giants year.
I'm not going to overreact too much to week 1. Dallas looked good. They didn't have to do too much offensively, so I didn't really get to gauge how Mike McCarthy got to call that unit over there. Giants, on paper, you have a really good team. You have a good defensive front. You have a good defensive secondary. You have a solid offensive line. You brought back all your weapons. Daniel Jones is the question, like it is for most of these teams. What is the quarterback going to do? And if you're going to do that, bro, it's going to look like this a lot. Because it's not like you have phenomenal receivers out there. You have a good core group of guys. You have a good room, but you don't have any game changers out there. And as great as Saquon is, every time I watch him, he has 10 carries for 24 yards at some point in the game.
Yeah.
He'll break one off at some point, but we need a little bit more consistency out of that run game as well. Daboll, we know you're a good coach, and it's tough to coach when you have a guy like Daniel Jones back there missing throws, throwing behind guys, turning the ball over. I mean, you have your work cut out for you, but I think the Giants are going to be okay. They get to build off how they played last year. They finish terribly and they start terribly, so that's not a good sign. But
Right.
Don't want to overreact. Don't want to give too much credit to Dallas.
No, not yet.
Is that it for you? I'm good. We can wrap this up right now. Catch this Monday Night Football game, Buffalo, New York.
Yeah, we'll be back to recap tonight's game tomorrow and preview Thursday night for y'all. And hopefully we get a better week 2 this coming week. Other than that, I got to end it here because I'm still reeling from my squad's putrid performance.
We can see it, man. Like my guy said, we will have a recap of this Monday Night Football game and a preview of week 2 dropping Thursday morning. So be on the lookout for that. That's it for me. We appreciate y'all. Until next time.